safe ops. It's essentially like you visit a website, you don't put in your email, you don't put in any information, and then you'll get an email 5 minutes later saying like, hey, you left this in your cart. And you're like, wait, what? How do they have my email? So that's like, basically they can collect your email from when you input it in on a different site. There's two questions here, right? There's like, number one, does it work?
I've heard it does. The cost is actually really crazy of it that I've seen.
It would be hard to believe that it wouldn't work, Cody. It's like you're sending more emails to more people.
Welcome back, season 3. We are back for another season.
We'll kick off talking about retention, like what to do when your retention is trash. And then the flip side of like, my retention is awesome. Why is that? Which is a question nobody asks. And then we'll hop into Cody's forte, talk about Twitter ads, Advantage Plus, the GWP fun stuff, and some others. A lot of language I don't understand, but I'm about to get educated on.
Yeah, we were talking about what we're going to talk about, and I was like, yeah, I'll talk about Advantage Plus, and Eli's like, that's great. Like, I don't know what it is, but I know a lot of people are talking about it.
It gets people going. Yeah.
Down to Chat is brought to you by Postscript. In my opinion, Postscript is the SMS platform built for Shopify brands. To be totally transparent, we just switched at Jones Road to Postscript, and it is the best decision we've ever made. We were on a competitor before, and they started tacking on all types of fees. The platform was not being improved at all. It was just getting really expensive, and the service we were getting was just nothing compared to what we've received from Postscript since being with them. The product with Postscript is just hands down the best that I've ever used. To me, it has the best integrations for Shopify stores of all sizes. It's got the best feature set. The segmentation is the easiest and most powerful. The pop-ups are great. But really the thing that I love is I've never experienced such great service from a software provider. The only time I heard from our previous provider was around contract renewal time. But with Postscript, they've gone out of their way above and beyond to make our program uber successful. And it's really evident that they care about us getting as much value out of our program as possible. So in my opinion, with Postscript, you get the best product on the market, you get it at the best price, and you get it with the best service. There's a reason why the fastest growing Shopify brands like Dr. Squatch, Native, Olipop, Feastables, and now Jones Road Beauty are all using Postscript for their SMS program. Sign up for Postscript today to take your SMS program to new heights. Before we get into it, are there any other changes for this season? Anything else that we're kind of thinking about? I think we've talked about having more guests on, so maybe getting like 4 or 5 different guests on. Who anyone you're thinking?
I would love some suggestions. Drop it in our Twitter if you want to see somebody.
That would be great. We definitely love suggestions. If you want to be on, let us know. We obviously will always consider it, but definitely want to get some people on. What are some things you want to learn? Like I want to learn from like some like hardcore data nerds. I think would be great.
Data nerds. I'd love social. Like I'd love to dive deep on social.
Kendall?
Maybe.
That would be a good one. I want influencer. I've got somebody who's great at influencer that we've talked about getting on.
Yes. And then the other, I'd love like deep dives into like customer learning. Maybe Caitlin.
That would be great. Some like diving deep on research.
Yeah.
AI maybe?
A little chat GPT. Stop it. Noah Kagan.
I actually had my first, real quick, I had my first like AI mind-blowing thing yesterday in Notion. I was like writing because I fucking hated on all these chat GPT threads and stuff like that. And like I think it's super cool, but I also think it's like I just hate how people switch gears and they're like, oh, Web3. Like everyone was like, oh, I'm building at the intersection of Web3 and commerce. And then now they're using that intersection thing. Like I'm building at the intersection of AI, and I'm like, oh my God.
AI and commerce.
Throw up. When people say that I'm building at the intersection of, I fucking hate it.
Wait, what was the mind-blowing Notion AI?
So I'm writing like a storyboard for our next shoot. And, you have this thing where you can continue writing. And I changed kind of the concept, and I was doing the new concept. And it essentially spit out the same exact framework and formula with the new hook. So I had like hook options. I had like intro. I had, the different components of the video. And it literally took what I put for the other ones, but it changed it based on this new concept and gave me like 10 different hook options that actually related and actually like were pretty good. So essentially I wrote one and it completed the rest of it. And obviously I had to go and edit, but I was like legitimately mind blown.
It's fascinating. And Notion AI was like a pretty quick spin. Like they were talking about it. It was in beta, and now it's just like launched and all the accounts are moving quickly.
Well, and I thought it was going to be free. Obviously it's not going to be. So now I've got to decide it's $10 extra
per user.
And I'm like, fuck, like doing the math.
Yeah.
Like, is that
First
worth
they gave
it?
it to you for free.
I think it is. I think if we use it, I think it's actually going to not only save a ton of time, but be insanely effective.
Yeah, the other Gorgeous now started tossing in AI like as of last week. It still needs a little bit of help, but it's.
Do you have anything you want to share about that, or you want to do that in a few weeks once you test it out?
I think we probably need a couple of weeks to kind of see how it goes. I think our product selection is interesting because there's just a lot of nitty gritty kind of dependencies on customer, et cetera, based on like both on the product side and on like shipping delivery. So it'll be interesting to see how quick the AI learns. But what I was saying before is Noah Kagan from OKDork, the ex-Facebook guy, was like the biggest money makers in AI so far are the people teaching people how to use AI, like 10 ways to use AI.
But don't they say that about everything, right? Like the people in the gold rush that got the richest were the people selling like the picks or whatever. The shovels, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. I saw a thread yesterday that was like somebody was like the best way to make $100K a month is with an AI service agency or something.
Incredible. Yeah.
I was like, there's no like ChatGPT launched like a month ago. There's no way that this guy's making $100K a month already. Like
the hustlers will hustle.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Should we talk about it? You want to talk about retention?
Yeah.
So I'll kind of tee it up for you. You wrote a really good newsletter this week. Heard you were inspired by me and Sharma's. I kind of talked about what to do when just performance is shit in general, and was probably focused more on the acquisition side. So you kind of put your spin on it and talked about what to do to fix retention. So yeah, let's just kind of dive in there. What are a few things you look at, or if you're advising somebody and for whatever reason, either it's gone to shit or probably less have gone to shit. It's just not good and hasn't been good where they want it. What are the things that you would audit and that you would look at it and go from there?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about retention is it's always like our retention is great, our retention is awful, and it's never sliced and diced into different like cohorts. Like most people are just not thinking thoroughly about it. They're just like, oh, our retention is not great, we need a better product, when in reality, like that's not always the answer. We talk about,
when somebody says retention's not great, like what if you were to go into business and you got somebody's data, what would you look at? What is there one metric? Is there a source of truth? Are there multiple things you would look at?
I think there are multiple things. Like, for example, like, there's the classic, like, oh, it's a mattress, like the LTV, the AOV, like everything's different. But I think the few things I'd look at, I'd start looking at cohorts, like when, like our cohort retention number is getting better or worse over time. Are there
like a repurchase rate?
Exactly. Are there specific times of year, the cohort, LTV by cohort, all that stuff, AOV by cohort, and, like we've spoken about in the past, plenty of ways, like how you can increase AOV and how you can increase LTV. But I think the first thing is an audit, right? Like looking at repeat purchase rate by cohort, churn rate, splitting it by customers that have ordered, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times to get a better understanding. And on the qualitative side, like looking at NPS scores, like is there something dramatic that we've seen over the last 2, 3, 4 months? I think it's obviously different if your retention was awesome and then it went off a cliff versus your retention is never great and you're just kind of spending your way through it.
Yeah. Good point.
But I think at its core, it's like understanding cohorts, like really, really deeply understanding like what does it look like when your customers are super strong versus when they're not? Is that different year over year? And all that fun stuff. And I think the interesting thing that most kind of people have spoken about over the last 6 months has been like, if your retention is not great, launch new products. And I think at its core, it's not an awful idea. Like new products do usually help for retention. But what I've seen is that, new products can also cannibalize big time, which is not the number, which is not the math that most people are doing. It's like, okay, you launched a new SKU. It's amazing. Is it just taking revenue from other SKUs? But I think that's to simplify it, at its core, retention is like, it's not as great as customers were thinking it would be. And that's like, is it a product question? Is it a shipping and delivery question? Is it a customer service?
So how do you find out? How do you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would start by auditing numbers to get a better understanding of where people are dropping off. And then I'd start asking questions. So customer conversations, looking at reviews, looking at NPS, looking at, like any sort of customer research I can do. I usually start off with looking at NPS. I just think it's like the detractors will give you a really good idea of like where the shittiest part of your business is, and the promoters will give you a really idea of like what you're doing well. And I think if you can get that at volume, you get a better understanding qualitatively of like where you're at. And then quantitative is like all the metrics we were talking about, like LTV by cohort, AOV by cohort, trying to understand like where the drop off is.
Yeah, because that's easy. Pretty much with any metric, it's easy to see what is working, what is not working. Or we used to increase LTV by 30% in 60 days. Now we're increasing it by 15%. But there's really not much in there that's like, here's why it's not working, and that's kind of what you have to dive into. So just to kind of summarize it, you'll look at like kind of past cohorts to see changes. Oh, this October cohort is not nearly as strong as in November. Again, there's probably a lot of seasonality into it. But I think it's probably important. Would you say to like one thing we'll look at a ton is like, all right, like what changed in those months? Like what products are we acquiring people on? I know that's something you like to look at. Like what's people's first product? What channel are they coming in on? I think those are probably some of the most important ones as well.
Yeah, I mean, once you get an understanding of like where there's a drop off, but like I guess A, where there's a drop off, and or B, where like your retention is better than average, right? Like for example, if you're seeing like your November cohort is crushing it compared to your August cohort, and you're seeing that like even if it is kind of every year the same, right? It's still a question like why is November crushing? Sometimes it can be like, oh well, maybe October's crushing because November is Black Friday. And some of these people are like, they purchase once and they purchase a second, and that frequency, like we talk about like RFM, like recency, frequency, and the money they spend. And I think it's like sometimes that push of getting them to purchase twice in 34 days is a huge kind of like trajectory change in terms of their LTV. And then it's like, okay, what can we learn from that? Like maybe we don't have Black Friday sales or discounts or special bundle options in February, but we can still kind of create this kick-ass post-purchase flow that kind of tries to get them to repurchase either the same product in a different shade or a completely different product within 30-something days, right? So I think there's a lot of learnings, both on the plus and the minus. Like Cody asked me this last week. He's like, why is our retention better than normal now? And it's like, it's usually a weird question to get asked, right? Because you're like, usually it's like, why is something different? It's like, oh shit, this went to shit. But it's like, why is it better than normal?
Yeah, I hate not knowing. Yeah, I know. I want to know. Anytime somebody asks me if we have like a good few days, why are we doing well? I'm like, I need to know. Like you want to have some idea of, hey, like I want to be able to replicate this.
Yeah, and I took a dive into PL, and you start looking at the numbers, and you're looking at seasonality, and you're looking like, oh, we have a new SKU that launched. Is like maybe there's a strong cohort that's kind of kicking in now, and it's super fascinating to kind of like take a dive in and then get a better understanding. You're like, oh, okay, like some of this can be replicated. Like maybe we can't launch a new product every 3 weeks, but we can definitely kind of like share different varieties of a SKU to customers earlier on and kind of like cross-sell, upsell, and all that fun stuff. So I think it's, I mean, data is power. And I think we've spoken about this in the past that like, data can often be the thing that makes you ask questions. You're like, wait, what the fuck? Why is this dramatically different than what it was? But B, answer questions. Answer questions.
Yeah, especially because we're not that old of a business, and, we've grown so much that it's like, we don't have that much historical data to go off of. Like, I don't think a year or two is necessarily a great thing to model off of, but I think now we're building, like I saw Connor from Ridge talk about it, and like just having like a spreadsheet and just like a place where you pretty much have year over year historical data, very easy to access. So you can kind of see, hey, like this time last year, what did it look like? What's this, the seasonality into our business, which is obviously going to be, highly, just dependent on what vertical you're in, right? Like, for example, beauty is going to have, different months that you're strong in compared to wellness or something like that. So I think that's extremely important, just to set those expectations, set the forecast as well. And then obviously you're probably trying to do your marketing and product launch calendar around that seasonality. So like, yeah, I think that's extremely important. I think that's something we are still learning of, is when are we strong? When are people really likely to buy? And then, just to show how at least I'm thinking about using some of that. Like, for example, one thing we saw was like October cohort crushed it. Like customers that we acquired in October were really strong. We ran a kit offer in October and acquired a lot of people on that. Usually, I think we've talked about this a bunch, but like if you're looking at one of those things as first product purchased, usually, and I've seen this across brands as well, as people that are buying multiple products or people that are buying a kit are more likely to be a better customer. Two potential theories for that. Kits are usually more expensive. So usually the best predictor of a better customer is people that are spending more money on first purchase, but also you're getting more products in somebody's hand, and you're able to, maybe they don't like product A, but they like product B. We also put like a mini of our bestseller Miracle Ball in it, so they go through it faster. So that's another reason. So that's another strategy, is like a sampler kit or like a mini kit. That's one way to think about it. And then I think number two is just seasonally, right? Like one of the counterintuitive things for retention that I've seen, and again, pretty much across every business, is like you're going to increase lifetime value more right after you acquire somebody. You would think it's going to be later on, right? They haven't finished their products, but I think people are just hot. They've got the dopamine ready. They've got the credit card out. This is why I think so many people do those spammy upselling and stuff like that. But so it's kind of like, do you go harder? Like November, we have a big offer, it's going to be huge. Like I am now thinking in terms of forecasting spend throughout the year. Like October, we should just be like crushing spend and just like being super aggressive with acquisition. I think most people are being aggressive in November, but do we go when CPMs are cheaper, there's still good buying intent, and we know LTV is better? Like that's kind of how I'm thinking about it now.
Yeah, I think the fact that retention is kind of like giving us a better idea of how acquisition should be done is fascinating, and it's obviously the other way as well. But I think it kind of gives you a lot of power in continuing to build. I think, yeah, like that to me sounds like a really sound idea. The other last thing I think that's worth talking about in the retention is like most people are just splitting it into like, looking at Shopify and saying like, oh, these are the first time customer versus the repeat customer versus, taking a deep dive and looking at like, active recent versus active non-recent. Do you want to briefly touch on that?
Yeah, it's just the I guess like the forecasting model that we're using. Shout out to Dave Recook. He's got like a great course on CXL, and I just really liked his model and really simplifying it. But yeah, I guess really looking at two different types of customers, rather than just saying this is new versus not. You have your new customers, which is anybody who is acquired in that month. You have your forecast for that. And then you have recent, which is like anybody who is acquired in the last 6 months. And you kind of have a retention curve for that, knowing like, all right, in the first 30 days, people are going to place an additional 15% of orders or 10% of orders or 30% of orders. And then from there, it usually drops off a little bit, but you have incremental, all right, then another 8%, then another 5%, like, and then, and that kind of stacks up. But then past, 6 months, so 180 days, people are still going to buy. And it's not going to be a ridiculous amount, but there still are customers. And as your business grows, that kind of long tail and the number of people kind of in those audiences is really going to grow. And it's kind of like compounding, like one of like those eighth wonders of the world, where like it doesn't seem significant, but as you just keep playing this game and keep growing and look out for churn, making sure people are still purchasing, the amount that you're getting can be really significant. I think it's really obvious in a subscription business. You see it on the first of the month or 15th of the month, whatever it is, and you can just see that your MRR just stack up. You know what I mean? You don't really see that in a non-subscription business, but it's happening. It's just not a subscription or not, so it's not as binary. It's not as predictable, but you still there's still that same principle that's happening.
Yeah, and when we look at like our, like active and non-recent, like so those are some of the best performing incremental direct mail cohorts we've ever had, right? Like these people that haven't purchased in 180 days. So I think it's, when you split it out that way, you're like, okay, these are customers that have purchased maybe twice or three times, but then kind of disappeared for 6 months, and when they come back, it's usually really strong as well.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. As we're getting more into direct mail and really trying to strategize, we just kind of finished our second campaign, and it was outrageously successful. I think a lot of people have been talking about direct mail and kind of a little bit of a mixed bag, and like some of crazy claims like a 20x ROAS or 100x ROAS. The only way to do direct mail properly is to measure incrementality and kind of compare that to a cost. But yeah, I totally agree. I think part of it is, all right, how do we get people going from one order to two? That's kind of like you're recently acquired. And then it's also like, how do we do a win back or a pre-churn? And like Eli talked about, like as your business grows and the size of people in there, like that probably becomes more important, especially if somebody has shown a propensity to be a good customer but happen to lapse. Like if you can identify those people, that's something that's worthwhile.
Yeah. I mean, we've done the direct mail with the holdouts and all the fun stuff, and it was pretty insane. So I look forward to doing more like automations and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it'll be an exciting 6 months.
Quick question for you. Anything else on this before we go on?
No, I think we covered it. If anyone has any questions, or if it's like, well, you didn't look at this metric, or like you suck at retention, or like anyone has any kind comments, you can always drop it in the Twitters.
Yeah. Question on retention: how do you feel about those services where, I'll just say the name retention.com, where they're kind of claiming that you're not really sending as many abandoned cart emails as you could, because I guess if somebody's not logged into Klaviyo or whatever it is, they're not getting it. I have my thoughts. So how do you feel about those? And maybe if you want to give a better explanation of what they are.
I mean, the basic idea, from my understanding, and we've seen like the, what is it called? Safe opt. Like we've seen these kind of tools before. I'm not sure the details on retention.com if they're doing more than like a safe opt was doing, but it's essentially like you visit a website, you don't put in your email, you don't put in any information, and then you'll get an email 5 minutes later saying like, hey, you left this in your cart, and you're like, wait, what? How do they have my email? So that's like, basically they can collect your email from when you inputted it on a different site, way back across a totally different.
Just like the terms and conditions, like, hey, we can send you emails from other brands and stuff.
I kind of like the first FAQ from them is like, how is this legal? So I think it's probably a question that's asked a lot, and I guess the diligence was done, and it is totally legal. I think with the spirit of the law versus like being legal, like it's one of those things that feels funky. Yeah. I'm a experience and retention kind of guy, so it's like this feels more of an acquisition.com versus retention.com. I think that there's two questions here, right? There's like, number one, does it work? And it's like, well,
I've heard it does. I have
probably
heard
does.
That it does. The cost is actually really crazy of it that I've seen.
It would be hard to believe that it wouldn't work, Cody. It's like you're sending more emails to more people. It should.
Here's what I heard. I don't remember who. I think you and I were talking to somebody about this, but so it works. But again, this is why incrementality is so important. It might be claiming a lot of non-incremental conversions, because apparently there's a delay from the data getting passed back and whatnot, and you're sending it from Klaviyo. So a lot of people that are abandoning cart are going to purchase without this anyways, right? Yeah. And this is even just for any Klaviyo abandoned cart email or anything you do. And so don't assume that all of your Klaviyo abandoned cart email flows were incremental. A lot of those people would have purchased. They're just saving it for later, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to measure it. And you don't really have to measure incrementality for Klaviyo, because you're not really spending anything. There's no variable cost. But as soon as you have this really high, I've seen brands spending 6 figures on this retention.com thing, and they're claiming all this revenue, like you have to validate that. Same thing with direct mail. If you're putting an incremental cost in, I think you've got to validate that. And I haven't seen those numbers, at least. So that would be like another thing to watch out for. But yeah, it kind of feels a little spammy to me. I know it's illegal, but there's a lot of things that are legal that I don't want to do.
Yeah, well, that's a good framing. But do you ever leave a website and you get abandoned cart emails that are like, oh God, this is raunchy. Like, this is over the top. This feels desperate. This feels weird.
I've gotten safe opt emails. I've gotten
so it's
safe
like,
opt.
It works, right? The question becomes is like, to what expense? Like, at what expense, right? It's like, it works. It probably drives revenue. Customers, like I've been on the other side of safe opt at Olipop, and we got a ton of emails that were like, how do you have my email? This doesn't feel right. So it's like, most of the people that I talk to are like, oh, customers never complain. I'm like, sir, when was the last time you were in the inbox? It's probably been a decade.
Yeah, it's like a growth marketer saying they never
hop
complain.
Into your gorgeous, because
it's like a growth marketer who never complains, whose company like outsources CX.
Every single one of them. It's always like, our CX is great. And I'm like, okay, when was the last time you were in the inbox? Our response time is, okay, when was the last time you were in the inbox? When was the last time you spoke to a customer? Maybe they're great. I think it's like everything else. I think the unique thing about, not unique, but like the one of the qualities that I gently like about myself is that I'm willing to be proven wrong on almost everything. So at some point, I think it might be worth testing if we can.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You're open testing. I like the idea for direct mail, because you can apparently do the same thing for direct mail, but it doesn't feel as spammy or as creepy, because they have no idea. Like, they think they might just be in a prospecting audience. You know what I mean? Like, no one's like, oh, why? Like, how did this? That's kind of the funny thing with stuff on the web, like the privacy stuff. Like, I think people are very aware of invasions of privacy, but direct mail data gets sold all over the fucking time. Anything you buy, credit card data, like, there are all these lists that are literally sold. I bought a piece of like gym equipment, and I looked at the terms and conditions. And it's one of those things where they're trying to, compete with Peloton. So, you're putting in all of your height and weight and all of this different information. They're selling all of that fucking data. Like, but people just have no idea of it. But I think they're much more aware of online privacy concerns. So
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
all the junk mail you get, right? It sometimes feels eerily relevant, right? It's like you buy a shirt and then 6 months later you're just getting a bunch of shirt manufacturers sending you like, here's this shirt, and you're like, that's like too much of a coincidence, right? So I think there's definitely like data sold. I think with direct mail, it's also like not 10 minutes later, it's 4 days later. So I think there's also a little bit of, you're like, oh, I don't know. It's like somebody knocking on your door 5 minutes after you left Whole Foods saying like, hey, did you check this? Because this I think would be something you like. I think it's interesting, and it might crush. Season 3 of Down to Chat is brought to you by Tapcart. I know we chatted about this last season, but there's so many cool brands that have created an app with Tapcart in the last couple of years, and I wanted to highlight one of the ones that I've been looking at. So Chubbies. Chubbies has been around for a minute. They're in the men's fashion space. I think what's interesting about Chubbies is they kicked this off in 2018. At this point, they have 137,000 push subscribers, which is kind of crazy. It's like these people are all getting notifications every time they send something in app, which is super cool. The return on app spend, which Tapcart calls ROAS, not the ROAS but a different ROAS, is 189x, which is pretty insane. I think the unique thing about Chubbies is that they're looking at this as a unique way to kind of reach this top 10 to 30% of customers with deals, drops, brand news, all that fun stuff. I think when you sprinkle in some app exclusives in your strategy, it's really helpful for retention. So I think it's a fun thing to check out. If you're looking to learn more about Tapcart, you can check out tapcart.com/down to chat, and you'll get your first 2 months free. One of our listeners actually called Caden Lane. Brian from Caden Lane launched with Tapcart a couple of weeks ago and just showed me his app on Twitter the other day, and I was blown away. It's pretty insane how quick they've built it, but also how thorough and amazing it is. So definitely check out Tapcart, and thanks for listening.
The other reason I like it for direct mail is, like, let's use email to acquire those customers who we've driven there. Let's say you drive somebody there from Facebook ads or YouTube ads or whatever. You get their email, they take our quiz, or they go through the pop-up. Like, let's use Klaviyo, let's use Postscript to try to, get those people across the finish line if we have their email. But if we don't have their email, obviously we can't use that stuff. Then it's like, all right, I don't mind paying 50 cents to Postpilot to be able to try to not even reacquire, but actually acquire this person. So to me, it's kind of more retargeting than it is. I guess it's acquisition, but it's retargeting much more than it is like a true retention play of this like retention.com thing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on. What's next?
I mean, the D2C Twitter sphere has been up in arms around Twitter ads. Your notorious tweet, like, a little vague over there. People are like, wait, does it work? Does it not work? The replies to Jones Road sponsored tweets are like, I have seen this 4 times in the last 20 minutes.
I had to stop reading the comments. I feel like Twitter ad comments are probably the worst of them all. I think they're even worse than TikTok. Yeah,
savage. But tell the people what's been going on. Tell people not to get into it if they haven't done Facebook ads. Give the whole Twitter ad spiel.
Yeah, let's do it. So they are working very, very well. I'll caveat that as, that's efficiency, not volume. I haven't heard of people spending nearly the same amount on Twitter as they are on other platforms. But I'll just kind of give some quick background. If you guys haven't heard, Twitter was acquired by Elon Musk. Now I'm just going to so Twitter, like, it was never really even considered for DTC brands, for e-commerce brands. Twitter has always focused on top of funnel, and this isn't like top of funnel like Facebook ads. This is like Bank of America top of funnel, like multinational corporations who, like, their metric is engagement and awareness, and they couldn't even tell you what a purchase is. So Twitter actually didn't even have a conversion pixel. They actually weren't even optimizing for web traffic. They were optimizing for link clicks. It was like the lowest funnel you can do. And that's just not a good quality signal. And I think some of this stuff happened prior to Musk, but I think it's really accelerated. I think they've made more progress with their ad platform, post-acquisition than they did in 10 years before it. So for whatever reason, I don't know if they've lost a lot of revenue from larger brands post-acquisition, but they seem to be really, really hungry to get into some of this DTC spend, some of this e-commerce spend, what they would consider lower funnel. And so we tried it. I heard about some people having some good success with it. I'm seeing more, right? Like I think everybody talked about it, but like once Musk took over, like all these drop shippers, and like these drop shippers are just savages and are just trying to get essentially arbitrage an ad platform, and they're trying to just get the cheapest costs that they can. And because their margins are so poor, it really like if they're spending money on this platform and you keep seeing their ads and they keep spending with poor margins, it's like, oh, there's probably something here. Same thing with like affiliate marketers, right? Because they don't have like the best margins. So I think, then kind of some e-commerce advertisers started testing it and trying it. And a lot of people are like, oh, Twitter ads don't work. Like it's a completely different product than what you've tested a year ago.
Who are some people that you saw using it early?
Ridge Wallet was one. I'm trying to think who else. This one, Jeremy's Razors. I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. I saw theirs. They're that like Ben Shapiro's brand, I think, like his like media company's brand.
Right.
Who else did I see? I'm trying to think. Definitely right now I'm seeing a ton of newsletters. I'm actually about to launch some ads for my newsletter this weekekend. Have heard of some very nice customers. Oh, maybe it's because that's what I'm interacting with. Seeing The Hustle. I'm seeing a little bit of Milk Road. I'm seeing TLDR, Daily something, Daily Upside, I think. Yeah,
are
ones
they
I'd never
doing
heard
like
of before.
are they just doing like a boosted tweet, or are they just
No,
going,
they're running ads. Yeah, they're running ads through Ads Manager. Newsletter company I started consulting with is also running them and getting some pretty good costs. And so overall, results have been very good. I don't want to speak on what creative works well because I don't know. It's too early. Mm-hmm. We are essentially taking what works on Meta and just doing it. And I'm seeing a lot of brands do that, and it seems to work. I would say video is doing really well. So I guess I am talking about it, but like I don't know about specific angles and stuff like that. Landing pages are really important, as always. But so I wouldn't run into a PDP. Listicles seem to be doing really well. It's also just kind of what I'm seeing. In terms of where in the funnel sits, I don't have an answer for that either, right? Mm-hmm. Like, for example, Facebook, I'd say is mid-funnel. You got some discovery, but it's more of like direct conversions. Obviously, like a Google search is like bottom of funnel. YouTube is top of funnel. Yep, but big BOFA. And I don't know about Twitter yet. I don't know. I think it's too early. I mean, we've probably been running Twitter for 2 to 3 weeks. There are ad kind of incentives available. I don't know if they're available to everybody or above a certain size, but if you have a rep, definitely obviously reach out and ask about that. I will say the Twitter rep that we've worked with is probably the best, most supportive rep that I've worked with on any of the platforms. So like, they're really hungry, and I think the people that have stayed behind at Twitter are really passionate about the product. I've been able to talk to kind of some people that are pretty high up on like their product team, and like they're really hungry for feedback. They really want to make it the best experience for advertisers possible. But I think it's like the people that stayed, they kind of have the startup mentality. They're like, we're excited about the future of this company, and we really want to kind of turn this into something, right? Like a lot of the people that obviously weren't for that, they left. So I'm pretty excited about it long term. Here's what I'll say. The traffic is extremely cheap. It's like Facebook 2016 cheap. Very cheap. The conversion rate is not nearly the same as other platforms. So it's kind of like a little arbitrage opportunity. It's kind of like TikTok before everybody flooded to TikTok. The one thing, though, that does make me pretty optimistic about it. So again, I don't love the low conversion rate, but it is a cheap CAC with costs that are sometimes 90% cheaper than what we're seeing on Facebook.
Wow.
Surprisingly to me, the average order value is our highest. It is significantly higher than on any other platform we're seeing. YouTube has been kind of our highest to date. TikTok, we are not spending much on TikTok. We actually started again finding some good performance because they've got their version of Advantage Plus, this kind of machine learning smart performance campaign that's actually doing really well. We can maybe talk about it next week. But so I found that to be interesting. And
why do you think that is?
What they've told me at Twitter is the demographic data is actually pretty good, right? So they're trying to obviously grow the platform. Elon has these big plans. I think in a few months we're going to see a lot of stuff start rolling out, and because in the daily active users is so low compared to everybody, right? And I think right now it's just who's on Twitter is actually happens to be a more affluent demographic. I mean, Twitter is a little bit more information. It's a little bit more educational. It's a little bit less mindless entertainment like TikTok. So kind of like LinkedIn is like your highest CPMs because you're going after business people, you know? But I think Twitter, like there's a good mix. I think it's more of a mixed bag. A lot of people will use it for sports. A lot of people aren't really using it socially or just for entertainment yet.
Too early to see LTV data, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's I don't think people are using Twitter for entertainment yet. I think they will, which means there's less daily active users. The ironic thing is for them to get more daily active users so they can make more, they need to get less businessy and more just entertainment stuff, right? That's just like what people are going to use a social platform for. And that means that actually probably the AOV will go down because it's going to be everybody's on the platform. So that's, I don't know, that's just like wild speculation of somebody who's spent 3 weeks spending on a platform. So take everything I say with a grain of salt here.
Wait, what about LinkedIn? Now that you're saying it, like, do any D2C businesses advertise on LinkedIn, or is it just straight like
it's all B2B
courses?
CPMs are so expensive on LinkedIn. I've never ran LinkedIn, but I think you pay like $60 CPMs, and most brands are spending like $10 to $15 CPMs on Facebook. But yeah, so that's what I would say. Twitter, it's not a giant amount of spend, but it's enough to be significant. It's more than TikTok for us. It's now well above TikTok. I'll see what we can get out of it, but it's really promising, and it's cool to have another platform that works. Again, it's, you know, maybe it's not long term and it's short term, but they're really working hard to do something. I know you kind of brought it up, so I'll say, if you're not having success on Facebook, or if you are, you probably don't need to go to Twitter. Just don't go chasing the next shiny object. I remember a few months ago, everybody was testing Snapchat again for some reason, and I don't see anyone really spending on Snapchat now. That's not, you know, a big brand who probably needs to be.
So who should be testing on Twitter?
If your business really is spending a lot on other platforms and things are working well, and as you spend more, your marginal cost per acquisition gets pretty high on a platform. You know, once you're spending $40K a day on Facebook or whatever it is, you know, you might be getting a better return spending $4K a day on Twitter rather than spending $4K more a day on Facebook. You know, that's probably who should be doing it. But if you're not having success on Facebook and your marketing isn't working, I probably wouldn't go to Twitter.
Interesting. That's very helpful.
That would be my thoughts. Broad is working best. I'm actually pleasantly
big
surprised
broad guy.
see.
In general, you're a big broad guy.
Well, I usually am. It's what worked best for us everywhere else. But on Twitter, I thought, you know, maybe their machine learning isn't as, I don't even know if they do machine learning. It maybe isn't as advanced. So let's test some lookalikes. Let's test some interests. Let's test keywords. Didn't do very well. So Twitter ads. It's been a lot of fun.
So fascinating. It's fascinating to see kind of like the trajectory when any kind of platform changes, even the tiniest bit, how like, you know, all the growth guys kind of just like slowly silo in and then they kind of slowly exit. I think Twitter is like a somewhat slower, you know, rise than we're seeing from everyone else. Like I think people are a little bit less excited about risk. Maybe it's like the current economy or whatnot, but I think it's like, it's shockingly slow, at least from my vantage point, as far as like newcomers in the D2C world testing it.
There aren't that many. I think it's getting slow. I think hopefully this helps. I mean, I kind of debated trying to share it or not because I'm like, do we want the competition? But really, it's not going to make a big difference. And I think the more people are spending there, the more Twitter is going to improve things, get more data, improve kind of like their platform. I think we'll see more. I think we'll start seeing some more people testing it. My guess is it's going to be a mixed bag, that it's not going to work for everybody. I don't know who it's going to work for and who it won't. Right? Like YouTube works best for high AOV, right? Because a lot of it is view and longer funnel. TikTok usually works best for low AOV because it's more of an impulse thing. I don't know who Twitter is going to work for. I really don't.
I guess it's working for wallets because I'm seeing a whole lot of Ridge.
A lot of Ridge, yeah. That's the only thing with frequency seems to be pretty high, right? Like, I don't know about you.
If you see it once,
I'm seeing our ads nonstop too.
If you see it once, you'll probably see it another 3 times within the next 10 minutes.
At least, yeah. So frequency seems to be really high. so that's just kind of something where it just limits how much you can spend. It's only a matter until you're seeing Athletic Greens Twitter ads nonstop,
and then you've made it. They are doing a lot of whitelisting every single time I'm on TikTok.
I see crushing it. Yeah,
I see a ton of whitelisting from Athletic Greens. I think it's such a. I mean, and we've spoken about this in the past, but it's such a fascinating business just because there he goes. It's a fascinating business just because like everyone just saw them explode, but they've been around for so many years. What is it, like 8 years, 7 years?
10. I first knew them when I was in high school, and I was like getting into strength and conditioning, and I would follow all these guys like bloggers, like Eric Cressy's one, and like guys like that, like, and they would blog about it. And I didn't know anything about marketing, but like I could tell it was kind of like an affiliate link. But I could also tell they liked the product, right? Like Athletic Greens did a great job seeding before that was even a thing to just creators, influencers, whatever you want to call them. They weren't really spending anything. They bootstrapped it, I think, for like 8 years. So I graduated high school in 2010. So it was probably like 2009, 2008, maybe. That they still had like the black packaging. And I was
eating sesame chicken and a lot of pizza then. So I'm glad to hear you were on AG1.
Well, I couldn't afford it then. I was like, oh, this stuff sounds cool, but like $60, $80 a month, like that's crazy. And I feel like it was not really that much growth for a while, and then all of a sudden, like 2 years ago, everyone just started seeing everybody. They raised money for the first time, and then
But they popped off before they raised, no?
I think so. I do think so.
What
changed?
I think
they started
Facebook ads.
That's a good question. No, I don't know. That's a good question. I know some people there, so I'm curious to kind of find out. But obviously, I don't know.
Maybe we have them on the pod at some point.
That would be great. Let me see. Let me see if I can set it up. Though, yeah, they're by far my favorite DTC company.
I mean, influencer, they crush. They crush everything.
They do such an amazing job with their influencers. So they don't pay influencers. They do an affiliate program. You see it a lot. Like, for example, like Tapcart, one of our sponsors, right? They'll do like a vanity URL with a redirect. And it's a strategy we're now doing and testing. Athletic Greens is the first company I've seen that do it. So like for example, Bobby was an affiliate for a little bit, but like if you go to athleticgreens.com/Bobby Brown, like it redirects and it goes to a landing page. They've got these like beautiful landing pages. They test these gift with purchases. So you can see a lot of the strategies we're doing are definitely inspired by them. But they fucking crush it.
A ton of podcasts, like right there on. They do on so many.
Huberman, big ones too. Like
Rogan, all of them.
Yeah, Rogan, Huberman, which is obviously like a huge one. Ferris, but the cool thing is like you could tell it's really authentic. Like you can tell that Huberman and Ferris actually like the product and taste it. So it's like, to me, why it's so cool is they spent 8 years, 10 years like building just like an amazing product and building a community.
An incredible team.
I actually met their head of community was somebody who kind of was head of community at Lululemon. So they've built, they've built an incredible community, ton of creators, and then did ads last. And I feel like that's the opposite order that most DTC brands are doing things.
Yeah, and it's like everything else, right? Where somebody's like, oh my God, they just popped off. And you're like, yeah, popped off after 8-9 years of crazy hard work. And they raised money. I'm sure the co-founder the founder took some secondaries, but like it's been 8 years. Like it's been a lot of years. And I think it's fascinating to see that they're obviously like, they obviously have really good modeling on like, what's working and what's not, because the spend is so wide on so many different platforms. And I'm sure they figured out how to like properly suss out like what's crushing, what's not. But I mean, podcasts are so different than, a influencer direct link, right?
Yeah. It's hard. I can't even imagine at that level of different types of spend. Different media, like that's where you have to do media mix modeling, and like we're just getting it. We're just starting and kind of getting into that because we're getting across multiple channels. But like most people listening to this are probably 7 figures, probably some 8. Probably not that many 9-figure businesses. So it's like, don't worry about Twitter ads. Don't get caught up in the shiny object. Like Facebook ads are probably going to be your best paid acquisition channel, and just get really good at doing that. Can we chat really quickly? Go ahead.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I was going to say 2 things. First of all, we should save the GWP news for next week, just because.
That's good. I probably will have more data on it. Can I just share what it is? Can I give a teaser? Can I do a little cliffhanger?
A big tease. A big old
So we
tease.
are testing a gift with purchase offer, kind of what we're calling like evergreen acquisition. So it's not something you can see on our website, but you can only see it through certain funnels and landing pages. And we'll have some data next week, I think, that we'll be able to talk about. But I'm very optimistic
It's
about it.
spicy. The data will be spicy.
I think we'll have more data. Obviously, you need more than a week's worth of data, and I don't think we're testing perfectly this week. So next week we'll have a little bit more like apples to apples. But yeah, can we chat about Advantage Plus real quick?
100%. I'm a
What do
huge
you
Advantage
think of
Plus
when you
guy.
hear that? When I first heard that, a lot of people joked that it was like insurance, that it was like AARP insurance or something.
To me, it sounds like a credit card, but I guess I'm too deep in that world.
Credit
It's like a
card,
city.
yeah, exactly.
City has Advantage.
Something like
AA,
that, right?
Something.
Yeah. So I forget if we've talked about it before, but I'll give a quick rundown. Advantage Plus is Meta's new campaign type. It is essentially two things. It's their equivalent to Performance Max. TikTok now has their Smart Performance, whatever they call it. But really, what it is, it's trying to leverage machine learning and take the control from the advertiser to the machine, and trying to kind of limit the things that, the variables that an advertiser has to do. And I think overall, it's a huge net positive. Like, for example, you used to be able to target interests or lookalikes, and then you had an option to select this box that said, detailed targeting expansion, which means you can expand I give you permission to target people outside of this audience if you think and your model predicts that performance will be improved. And then about a year ago, they took that away. So it was just checked on by default, and you couldn't do it. You couldn't take it away. So I went from being able to do this really detailed targeting, say detailed targeting, but we'll kind of turn it into broad if we want. And now they're like, you don't even have the option of doing detailed targeting in Advantage Plus. It's kind of like broad. It's Meta saying, don't trust us. You keep fucking this up. Trust us. Trust me, bro.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they're taking out a lot of control. I don't even think you can do manual placements. You can't do like a cost cap or something like that currently.
Just straight, give us the money and trust us.
And we'll hopefully give you some money back. And a lot of people complain about Google and Performance Max and it being like a black box and not being able to see placement. I think people are more skeptical of Google because what they think is like, okay, they're having spend go to like some really non-profitable places because like they've got all the display network that doesn't do that well. It's like a way for them to like hide in display spend and like make everybody spend it there. But or it's like branded search. Like it's hard to see how much of a spend goes branded search. However, I don't think people seem as distrustful of Meta for whatever reason. So I think it does two things. I think it's working really, really well I've heard of a lot of people. I've seen back and forth results, but overall really good. First things, it kind of is forced best practices. So Meta has come out with, their Performance 5 used to be Power 5 of what they recommend, broad targeting, consolidation, all that kind of stuff. And again, I've talked about this on Twitter and stuff. I've been doing a ton of audits, and for whatever reason, people aren't following it. And usually it's the people that are struggling that are not doing these best practices. So I think this is just Zuck getting super fed up and being like, I'm not going to give you an option. Like, you have to do this. Because again, like these machine learning models are just getting so good, and there are downsides to them. But for the majority of people, I think they're a huge net positive, especially like non-sophisticated advertisers, smaller brands, So it doesn't allow you to do detailed targeting. It doesn't allow you to do broader lookalike versus interest. It doesn't allow you to do different bid or cost caps. It doesn't allow you to do placements. So it's kind of like, what are you left to do? You are left to obviously make your business better, but also make your creative better and your landing pages better. So I think from what I've seen and from our business and stuff, brands that were leaning into broad, leaning into consolidation, I think are getting a slight improvement. Definitely there. CPMs are cheaper. So it's cheaper because I guess they want people to spend on this. Or maybe it's just more, you usually get rewarded with cheaper CPMs if your ads are more relevant. So it also seems like that's one, but conversion rates are actually better. So you pair those two things and it's like, hell yeah. So
no brainer.
It kind of, so that's what I've seen. And then the second thing, they haven't shared a lot, but they say it's a new machine learning model. They haven't really said what that means. Some people probably might know. I haven't really seen anything, but I think they're not getting enough credit. Obviously, we see their stock is up, so they're starting to get some credit back in the market. But I don't think they're getting enough credit for how they've responded to iOS changes and really rebuilt their entire ad engine, it seems like, to be able to, use the lack of data and model data and be able to optimize and target based on that. So I'm super optimistic. I think a lot of people are. And I would say, who should be using Advantage Plus? Probably everybody. It's actually not available to everybody yet. It should be soon. I think they're just kind of like trying to, iron out some of the kinks or whatever. But if you have access to it, definitely try it. I would imagine it'll work pretty well, but it works best with creative that has already been proven to perform well. So, if you're running creative testing and you've got some winners, throw that in Advantage Plus. The other cool thing about it, I usually like 5 ads in an ad set, no more. I find even if you're spending $30K a day on an ad set, above 5 ads and it doesn't do well allocating, everything I've seen from accounts and talk to people, you can put more ads in an Advantage Plus ad set. So that's great because not only can it, allocate spend, and let's say you've got whitelisting that's going to work well with somebody, but, and a static that's going to work well with somebody else, like it can kind of do that. I think you might be able to get less creative fatigue because you're diversifying the ads that it's showing and spending on. So I don't know. It just makes it simpler. It's performing well. If you have access to that, definitely test it. If not, be on the lookout for it in your account.
If I had to learn one thing from Supermax Advantage Plus, it's this: trust Zuck. He smokes
Never
meats.
bet against.
He does water skiing. He owns half of Hawaii, and he'll do your ads work.
Never bet against him. I know. I'm curious how much they're still investing in the metaverse. Like I know that they've kind of realized, like in the market was kind of like, hey, we don't like this metaverse.
And we want you to make
gotta
money.
Fix your ad product. But
Yeah.
I think daily active users are up on Instagram. I don't know about Facebook. I think they're doing well right now. And I think
And Meta
6 months
Verified,
ago,
just taking
oh
the page
yeah,
out of Zuck's book.
how you feel about that? Out of Elon's book.
Out of Elon's book, yeah. I mean,
How do you feel about
it had
that?
to happen, right? It was a matter of time. Like if they see that people are willing to spend on Twitter to get verified, why would they not launch the same product?
So all it is just verification. It's just it's not no ads or anything like that.
My favorite part is like that it includes like expedited support or something like that. Like Facebook support doesn't exist outside of ads. Like it's not like if you get locked out, good luck. So now you're paying like $14 to get support when you're locked out, which is like to me that's like absolutely fucked. But listen, it'll work. People will pay for it. So
yeah, I mean, are you still paying for Twitter Blue?
I've never done Twitter Blue.
I thought you did. I thought you were paying. I thought you were verified.
I don't know. I'm not verified. I never bit the bullet.
Oh, I thought you did.
No.
I did because I was like, all right, like if it helps you get more reach, then it's like worthwhile, right? Then it's like a good $8 is well spent to help you get more reach. But I'm curious to see Meta, like it's a signal, so obviously people will do it because it is a status signal. Because I was thinking about it, like, would I pay for a creator that we're whitelisting through to get verified? $16 a month to make you an ad that you're spending $10K a month on or whatever it is perform better.
Makes sense. Yeah,
it makes sense. But once everybody knows that anybody can get verified, is it still a trust signal? The only thing is like the people that we're serving ads to, like the people that are listening to this podcast are internet geeks. Like we pay attention to stuff. People we're serving ads to, they might not even know. So it could be worthwhile.
Yeah, I don't think that the bulk of our audience is staying up to the latest and greatest of Meta Verified. So I think that makes sense. I mean, I think it's like like everyone was like, oh, if some people are verified, then everyone's verified. And I mean, I'm sure there are quite a few people paying for Twitter Blue that'll continue paying. I think they could have made it a larger of a difference between like the verified versus non-verified. Like I don't think reach has changed dramatically, and it's just like that extra tab in notifications. But like, why would you only look at verified notifications?
I agree. I've never looked at
that. Verified, right?
No, I agree. I think that's a good point. Also, they have like I just see one of our ads right now. Actually, just opened Twitter. So they have a yellow check mark if you're a business and not paying, and the blue. So it's like,
fascinating.
I don't know. Yeah, I agree. They should have made it a bigger difference.
Did you see that? Like I showed that to you yesterday.
You showed me something,
Week, and the All In podcast people, and like just there's a bunch of people that are now like have other like A16Z, like they have badges near their name that are specifically for the place they work at, which I think is interesting. It's just like they had it way back with like, oh, this is a China official, or like this is a Russia official. You know.
So this is so that you can verify that you're actually working where you say.
Right. Well, originally it was like, oh, this person's saying that China is the best and the U.S. sucks. Like PSA, this person works for the Chinese government.
Actually,
or this is like,
I remember like like some an official from Ukraine. Like this was before Elon bought it. Like posted like a Bitcoin wallet to send
Right.
stuff to, and everybody thought it was a fake, but it turned out it was like legit.
Exactly. And they had on YouTube as well. If you go on like YouTube and you watch like RT News or like some of these like news channels, it'll say like Russia affiliated channel, just so people think that like, you know, Al Jazeera will say like, you know, UAE affiliated channel. And obviously all the Chinese ones, just to give people like, hey, heads up, like the news here looks different. Here's why.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know why that's funny? Do you remember like a year ago when like a lot of people were joining A16Z, that like everybody started like making a meme of that? About it and joking.
I've joined
like,
AC.
It's actually funny. Like they almost need the verification now.
Yeah, everyone works there. Awesome. Well, this is a good kickoff. If you have if anyone has guest ideas that you'd love to see on the podcast, shoot Cody a DM, please.
At Cody Plouffe, verified.
The verified guy.
And then I think Eli, I think it's time for you to go touch some grass. You need to like double touch grass to make up for your sins this morning.
I straight up got canceled.
grinding.
Like I didn't open my Twitter, and now I just like opened my Twitter, and I just have a lot of notifications of like you motherfucker. I'm gonna touch some grass.
I feel like you really started something though on Twitter. I feel like no one was talking about touching grass.
Why do I not get the credit ever?
Now every week I'm giving you credit.
No, as you should. But like, I'm just like, I feel like I started that in D2C Twitter, and now that like
you did, and everybody on a Saturday is like,
and one guy
grass,
that does that all the time now blocked me. I'm like, do you not want to get canceled that you stole my idea?
Blocked over a credit card tweet.
Imagine, like, I feel like I'm a okay, nice guy. Like, I never knew people would block me. Like, what did I do? Did I say that your credit card is amazing?
You should just go in your villain era.
I think I'm in a villain arc right now. I'm just like slowly becoming internet's villain.
I think a lot of those companies are struggling though. A lot of like those DTC credit cards, from what I've seen,
and they're unhappy, and they're just blocking.
No, I just think no. I mean, yeah, you were trolling them, but I think with the market changes, like there's another one that I'm thinking of that offered like a certain percentage of cash back, and from what I've heard, they're either not paying it or they're being really slow to pay it.
Oh gosh,
I think just with the rates going up and everything, it's like they're, I guess, kind of like a zero interest rate phenomenon.
Yeah. Fascinating. Okay.
Well, we're now canceled. So it was a great season.
It's great to see you all. And a huge thank you to Tapcart and Postscript. So we'll see you next week. Cheers.
See you next week.